I love Groundhog Day. First time I saw it, it immediately became one of my favorite movies, and every viewing since then has only cemented that feeling as the movie works its magic deeper and deeper on me. It's the best treatment against grandiosity and in favor of selflessness I had ever seen. And to an extent, almost all stories are a treatment that's meant to tear away at our grandiosity and make us more organically and genuine ourselves, but this movie took on that approach directly in its premise. What if you had to live the same day over and over and over again? How would you spend that day? Groundhog Day is about a man becoming the best, most selfless version of himself, against his will, through sheer trial and error. I love Groundhog Day because it inspires me to be a more selfless version of myself. It inspires me to want to help others and appreciate my own life more. Groundhog Day doesn't do that by accident. I think the reason Groundhog Day is such an exceptional movie in the eyes of most audiences is because it proves that being selfless is the best way to live so effectively in the movie's final act. It could have just shown us up to the point where Phil Connors changes and we could have trusted that he's a different man, but it doesn't. Groundhog Day keeps him trapped until the very end, after he's proven both to Rita and to the audience how exceptional both he and Groundhog Day in Puxatawny truly is. My name is Chet Popelka. Groundhog Day is one of my favorite movies, and this is an essay about how Groundhog Day uses screenplay structure to make us want to live a more selfless life. I rewatched Groundhog Day before making this video, and a few things popped out to me this time around. The fact that Phil Connors is stuck in Groundhog Day isn't arbitrary. It's not the movie pandering to a particular holiday, and it's not making a caricature out of how irrelevant Groundhog Day is as a holiday. Okay, well, it is doing both of those things, but it also serves a narrative purpose. The assignment that Phil is given to go to Puxatawny and cover the groundhog, seeing or not seeing his shadow, is the exact antithesis of how Phil sees himself professionally. Phil views himself as a serious weatherman, a celebrity, as he says it, the talent of the group. He believes he ought to be listened to more and be taken more seriously by his bosses and his colleagues. So being sent to a podunk town to cover the shadow of a groundhog is the exact type of assignment that Phil views himself as too good for. So the groundhog is the embodiment of the way the movie and the characters in it actually view Phil. The groundhog is not a serious weatherman. He can't predict the weather. It's purely ceremonial that we let the groundhog predict the weather. But the same is true for Phil. He can't actually predict the weather either, and the first act is driving this point home. And so it's purely ceremonial. They're the exact same, but at least the groundhog makes everyone feel good and enjoy their day. Phil, on the other hand, complains and thinks he's too good for everyone. Side note, this is obviously why both the characters are named Phil. The second thing I noticed on this viewing is that the movie moves semi-poetically, so it has 5 narrative movements to it once we know that Phil is stuck in Groundhog Day. You can consider the end of the first act to be when Phil realizes that he's repeating Groundhog Day. After that, we've reached our narrative precipice in which there's no turning back, and we have our premise, and we have to move forward with it. After this, the narrative takes 5 distinct movements based on what Phil is doing with Groundhog Day. I listed them out and I named them here. So phase 1 is basically the first 3 days that Phil repeats Groundhog Day. This is the amount of time that it takes for him to realize that he's stuck. And basically, that it's not just a dream. It shows this by showing Phil going through the day and running into the same characters, simulating the same thing, but with different emotional reactions. After he realizes that he's stuck, we enter phase 2, where he narrativizes for us what he thinks he ought to do with the day that he's stuck in. Whatever he wants. Drink and drive, punch somebody, get laid, whatever he wants. There will be no consequences. He'll still wake up at 6 a.m. at his bed and breakfast the next morning. This would be great if he didn't get bored with it. At a certain point, he moves on from this, not because he's tried everything he wants, but because it's too easy. His life doesn't have meaning. So he wants something that will be harder to get. Rita. After this, Phil dedicates the most screen time of any of the 5 phases to trying to get laid by Rita. After this moment, you can see him viewing his predicament of being stuck in Groundhog Day not strictly as something that holds him back, but as an advantage to getting something that he wouldn't otherwise be able to get. Unlimited time with Rita. The problem is he doesn't actually like her. He just likes what she represents. The people not giving him the respect he wants. He thinks that if he can sleep with her, it'll prove to himself that he is as great as he thinks. And he's pretty good at it. He gets better and better, closer and closer each time. But right at the halfway point of the film, we see why he can't get Rita. It's not because she doesn't like him. It's because she wants to take it slow. And he's not able to do that. He is stuck in Groundhog Day. We see his plan collapse after this as he makes changes so that Rita will want to sleep with him that night. But that only exacerbates the reality that Phil is stuck in Groundhog Day and she's not. And so this drives a deeper and deeper wrench between the two of them on this perfectly tailored date that Phil has worked so hard on. And so this brings us to the fourth phase, suicide. After this, we get a comedic treatment of the fact that Phil sees no end to the fact that he's lost his old life. He's stuck in his nightmare, Groundhog Day and Punxsutawney. So the same effort that he put into sleeping with Rita, he now puts that effort into freeing himself from his nightmare. It shows a suicide attempt after suicide attempts, all unsuccessful. He still wakes up, trapped in Groundhog Day. This brings us to what in Blake Snyder's Save the Cat book is what's called the all is lost moment. It's when Phil proves to Rita that he's stuck by taking her through the whole day and showing her what's exactly going to happen. But this is the first time where Phil is doing something without trying to prove anything to himself. And so he's not trying to get laid by Rita anymore because he doesn't think he can. Phil no longer thinks that he can have anything in Groundhog Day. And this moment turns the film. This is where I think Groundhog Day is exceptional. A lot of movies would have ended the movie there, and Phil wake up on February 3rd dedicated to be a different man, and we'd trust that he's changed. But that's where this movie is different. It keeps Phil there for just a while longer so that Phil can actually complete his journey. Phase 5, inspiration. Phil wakes up the next morning inspired to be like Rita. Not for any particular purpose, but just because he likes how it feels. The time with Rita changed something in him and showed him that being selfless and loving where you are is actually the most enjoyable way to live your life. This moment doesn't last long because Phil realizes something while he's trying to be selfless. Even though he's stuck in Groundhog Day, doesn't mean everyone else is. Phil sees a man die, which is plenty traumatic enough, but the fact that it happened on his day, the day that he knows backwards and forwards, the days that he knows he can predict anything, someone still died on. After this moment, Phil realizes that while he can't save everyone and he can't do everything on Groundhog Day, there is a lot he can do. And that becomes Phil's calling in life, to make everyone's Groundhog Day as great as it can be. And this is where the movie gets me. It's Phil talking to the people, full of insight, knowing everyone and everything about Punxsutawney and Groundhog Day, and showing how thankful he has become for being trapped in Groundhog Day. It's become his calling to make the day as great and as beautiful for everyone else as it has been for himself. As happy as the groundhog of Punxsutawney makes everyone in Punxsutawney, Phil makes everyone happier. It was after listing these phases out and watching a little further into the movie that I realized what I was looking at on the legal pad I was taking notes on. I had different names for the narrative movements within them, but I went back and wrote under them what the narrative movements actually were within the movie. The 5 narrative phrases of the story mapped out the 5 stages of grief. Phil tries to deny that he's stuck in Groundhog Day by trying different things and talking to therapists, doctors, or Rita. He takes 3 days to do anything that he can to get back to his normal, linear timed life. After that, he lashes out at Punxsutawney by driving drunk, running into stuff, sleeping with women, and treating them poorly. After that wears out, he tries to bargain with his situation by sleeping with Rita. He thinks that if I can't be treated like I want in my regular life, I can at least sleep with the person I want to by using the fact that I'm stuck. After that doesn't work, he becomes fully depressed and only wants to escape Groundhog Day at all costs. But after all those have failed him, and he's moved successfully through the process, he's able to put the pieces together and decide what type of person he wants to be. He's able to accept the trauma of where he's been and what he's been stuck with, but he decides to view it as a positive thing and a life calling. And what this leads him to do is to love Groundhog Day, to love Punxsutawney, to love his crew, and to love every waking moment that he's in. At this moment, the moment where Phil is his fullest self, and Groundhog Day and Punxsutawney is the absolute best that it can be, then the narrative releases Phil. To go and continue to love where he's at, to love Rita, to love Punxsutawney, and to love every moment and every person that he's with. In this regard, Groundhog Day is a treatment on depression. It's not that Phil becomes depressed because he's stuck in Groundhog Day, but rather that Phil was depressed from the very beginning. When we meet Phil, he's apathetic about his situation as a small-time weatherman in a mid-sized town. Being stuck in Groundhog Day forced him to grapple with the fact that he didn't like where he was. But if you look at what moved him forward, it actually wasn't the fact that he was simply stuck in Groundhog Day. Rather, it was his relationship with Rita. Rita's attitude, Rita's approach to life, Rita's disposition towards the world is what convinces Phil that he wants to be a better person. And so I find Groundhog Day to be the most convincing treatment in favor of selflessness that I think that I've ever seen on screen. Seeing what Phil's life is like after he decides that he wants to act in selflessness, I find inspiring. I want to live life like Phil is living in the fifth movement of this narrative. And so I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Chet Popelka, and Groundhog Day is one of my favorite movies.